Namaste, Jai Bharat. Perhaps it doesn't need or it doesn't take great learning to understand that Bharat has produced very many great texts of great knowledge. It's evident from many books. We really don't have such counts that how many of such texts are there. It's amazing to find out many texts. I will just mention one, the Surya Siddhanta, then another one, the Arya Bhattiyam. There are so many books written, and these books gives fairly accurate knowledge of real scientific way of things. Surya Siddhanta speaks about astrology, astronomy, these kinds of things. They speak about the planets, their positions, their directions, and their size, radius, diameter, and their path and their behavior. This is one example I give. See, the example is an ocean. There are so many of such books available even today, in spite of people like Bhakti Khilji's banning of the great Buddhistic University of Nalanda. It is said that the library of Nalanda University continued burning for 2 months plus. If you think and if you can envisage, you can also envisage the seriousness of the situation of the lost knowledge through texts. In fact, we used to have the knowledge tradition, which is to be oral tradition, the Shruti and Smriti tradition, but then subsequently it got into written form and there were texts, and many texts are still available. My point is that these texts are available to us if one can read it, one can go through, one can study, and one can find that the knowledge described in these texts are fairly accurate. Now, the question that I would want to think is that how does human being know things? How do we know things? In 3rd century BC, Maharshi Akshapada Gautama wrote a text, the Nyaya Sutra. Among many things, he was speaking about the sources of knowledge, or sources of knowing, and he spoke about the common source of knowledge which could identify later: perception, inference, analogy, and verbal testimony. He calls it as perception, pratyaksha in Sanskrit. Inference is anumana, analogy is upamana, and verbal testimony is shabda pramana. They call us pramanas, or valid source. Now, interestingly, Gautama defined this, how this knowledge is, and he has defined, he's given definitions to this knowledge. When he defined perception, he defined it as, should I say Sanskrit? Of course. He defines it as indriyartha sannigasha utpanna jnana pratyaksham, which says that the knowledge resulting from sense-object contact is perceptual knowledge. Now, it all appears fine, but suddenly the Kashmiri Nyaya philosopher Jayanta Bhatta. Now, Kashmiris were speaking Kashmiris also those days. They were writing Kashmiris also those days. These days, Kashmiris don't write Kashmiri. They don't have Kashmiri texts. They have to learn Urdu. That's what has happened to them. That's what Islam has done to the Kashmiri scholars, as they have done everywhere all over the world. So Jayanta Bhatta finds that this definition of Maharshi Gautama, who wrote the original text, is short of something. It's short of something that he speaks about sense-object contact experience. But he immediately says this definition does not cover the yogic perception. That's precisely what I wanted to speak of. It doesn't cover yogic perception, which of course is called yogic. Yogic perception is perceiving without employing the sense organs, and that is what is important. Perceiving without employing sense organs, which let me call it as trans-sensory perception. Therefore, he redefines, supporting Gautama, that Jnana Karanagam, Jnana Pratyaksham. But this doesn't mean that Maharshi Gautama did not know this, but he must have, as I understand, defining only sense object contact perception. He had not ventured into defining yogic perception. Most likely, this is a situation. Otherwise, there is no way that he would ignore yogic perception, because the entire knowledge in ancient Bharati tradition is by and through yogic perception. This is precisely what I wanted to speak of. Look at these texts in ancient Bharati. And all these texts which are available to us, you can read, you can cross-check with modern scientific knowledge, and find that the knowledge presented in them, they are fairly accurate, sometimes more subtle and more accurate than the present modern times scientific knowledge. The question that one should ask is that how was this possible? How was this possible? Now let me talk about how science makes knowledge, or science made knowledge. You see, human being knows through sense object contact. Normal human beings knows things through sense object contact, and the senses have limitations. What actually science did, or what science does to us, is that it enhances or increases the capacity and the abilities of our sense organs. In order to enhance the capacities of the human sense organs, science created instruments. And with the help of these instruments, the cognitive knowledge had gone into realms or areas where normally, with the normal sense organ, one could not have gone. And then only we obtain all this knowledge, which we call as scientific knowledge today. Of course, there is definite thoughts and philosophy behind it, but I am talking about the first step of knowing, that is perception. So science invented such instruments which enables the naturally limited sense organs to transcend their limitations into areas of new areas where normally sense organs can't never dream of reaching. Then of course all this knowledge comes, and we have knowledge about the planets and this thing and that. We have telescopes, mighty telescopes were invented, and then all these things are found. Now the method of knowing in Bharatiya knowledge tradition was not through sense organs. The yogic perception is transsensory perception, not through sense organs. The yogis knew transsensory. They were knowing directly. So that's why this knowledge is called as experiential knowledge. The other one is called as scientific knowledge, is called as cognitive knowledge, based on contact. This is not based on contact, it is directly knowing. How the yogis are doing it? The theory is there behind it. I have not seen anyone who practiced it, because now, as things case stand today, we don't need that. But there was a time it was needed, and people had time, patience, and the ability to perfect the yogic perception. Of course, one should remember that it's not possible for all to do it. It's not possible for all to sing alike. It's not possible for all to write poetry like Kalidasa. It's a gift. Similarly, the ability to yoga should also be counted as a gift to know things transsensory, but the training goes to everyone. Once the training goes to everyone, only you get some people out of this who will be able to bring this knowledge down, and others can work on it, and will get expanded. So the method of knowing is very important. Therefore, these are knowledge texts, the ancient texts, which are in front of us as evidence. From these evidences, when you do reverse reasoning, you have no answer when a question is asked, how did they make all these things known? The answer is here. The answer is there in yoga vidya, yogaja, which of course got codified sometime later, much later, by Maharishi Patanjali. He codifies and makes Yoga Sutra, which narrates all these things. So we have the method explained in texts, we have the knowledge in the texts. Only thing, we don't have people who are doing it because that time is gone. We don't need it. But that doesn't mean that we had the knowledge when science did not have anything. In fact, those who are today's modern scientists who claim of some kind of civilization which they think is civilization were roaming around nude and hunter-gatherers eating raw meat. At that time, during that period, these things existed here. So, take these things seriously. There are so many things, you see, they are so wonderful sculpturing done in Bharat. I'll speak about it later because otherwise this gets very long. The wonderful sculpturing done in Bharat. Great sculptures. How they made it, you can't have an answer, but there is an answer. And some very strange images in the sculpture, very strange images, that also has got explanation, how this is done. So, the method of knowing in Bharat was unique, which was yogic. Otherwise, no one would have ever dreamed of knowing all those things. Till we meet again, Namaste, Jai Bharat and Jai Shri Ram.